Welcome to the Capital Compass, the podcast series to navigate your journey to value. Across the healthcare landscape, organizations are facing sustained financial pressure, but for rural and independent community hospitals, the stakes are even higher. Many are operating on narrow margins while working to maintain access and services for the communities that rely on them. But at the same time, the new legislation like the One Big Beautiful Bill is introducing funding opportunities that could reshape how these organizations approach capital investments, particularly when it comes to sustaining operations and modernizing infrastructure. So how are community hospitals balancing the immediate financial survival with long-term capital needs? And where can they find opportunities to invest strategically despite ongoing restraints? Today, we're going to explore the current state of rural hospitals and independent community hospitals, many of which are navigating with razor-thin margins, rising capital costs, and sustainability challenges. We're going to talk about the emerging policy support, including the Rural Hospital Transformation Program, and how this may impact capital investment decisions. In the studio today, we have two great guests to help us with the conversation and learn a little bit more. We have Russell Hall, Vice President of Independent Community Hospitals with Vizient, and Rebecca Gayden, Senior Principal with Capital Equipment Solutions. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you, Susan. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Russell, I'd like to start with you just to kind of set the table here. Let's talk about the state of the union of the rural hospitals and community hospitals. We understand that they have a lot of pressures and they feel some of the margin constraints and operating costs, maybe just a little bit more personally than some of our larger acute care hospital systems. Can you take just a minute, set the table, and just describe your experience and expertise, what you see out there?
Yeah, so there's two chief challenges in rural healthcare today regarding both financial and resources. On the financial side, obviously the Big Beautiful Bill just cut about $1 trillion of Medicaid funding. About 20 to 40% of rural communities use Medicaid. It's a proportionally bigger hit to these smaller hospitals than the larger ones, as you said. And so that is a big challenge. Now, this rural health transformation money is supposed to fill some of that void. But the other challenge for them is resources. In these organizations, they'll be wearing many hats across many departments. We love to joke that there's been times we've gone to visit, say, a CEO at a hospital, and he may be out trimming the bushes when we show up. Right? So, or one was driving the ambulance back from someplace and we had to wait. And we just love that. Those are great stories. And no one believes those stories, by the way, but it's real out in the rural communities. They got to wear a lot of hats. And those communities love their hospitals. They don't want their hospital getting gobbled up by the larger systems, or worse yet, having to close. And so I think what we're talking about today is how do we help those organizations improve their performance and get some money that's now available to them through the Rural Health Transformation Initiative, especially in light of the cuts that just happened from Medicaid in the Big Beautiful Bill.
So what do you think how these pressures are impacting their ability to invest in the capital space?
It definitely either could delay or do away with it altogether. If this money that's coming through RHT was not there, I would imagine we would see a lot of organizations having to either push off capital, try to extend the life cycle of some of the capital they have, probably beyond its best buy date, whatever. But that's what they're doing. They're trying to do more with less, and a big piece of capital sometimes just isn't on the agenda when the money's tight.
What kind of trade-offs do you see hospitals making in that decision process of how to spend their money?
So I think they're trying to squeeze as much life cycle as they can out of some of these pieces of equipment. And there's some that they'll look at and it's like it's on its last legs, it's not working. You know, obviously the pieces of equipment that will help them generate revenue are going to be a higher priority. So it's just they have to make some tough decisions around, do we upgrade our monitoring equipment, or do we try to invest with another organization on a mobile CT or mobile MR or something that we could utilize? Or do we stop doing services altogether that require that piece of equipment because we just can't afford the equipment, so we're just going to stop doing those services?
So, Russell, that's interesting to hear. Help us understand just a little bit of the difference about how the independent hospitals have to think differently than the larger healthcare systems.
So the smaller hospitals have to be very strategic about what services they can perform, what is going to be profitable for them. They're on very razor-thin margins. So they can't afford to be doing stuff that's not helping improve that margin, right? So there are a number of organizations that have stopped doing OBGYN, for instance, or there's other services that they've stopped because maybe there's another hospital 45 minutes away, or there's a larger hospital an hour away in the urban that they'll just send people to. So they have to make strategic decisions around the services that they're going to do. You mentioned already about capital buys. What can they afford to buy this year versus not? And then obviously there's the labor component, right? You don't want to be cutting staff, right? You want to make sure you're bringing in staff. Some of them have to go to contract labor, which can be very pricey, right? In fact, I had one CFO tell me that if we're using a lot of contract labor, we're already in trouble, right? Because that we're spending a lot of money on that, right?
Sure. It's either use contract labor, cover the gaps, or wear more hats.
It's just bad. And so our team's very passionate about this group. We love the stories, but at the same time, some are kind of heartbreaking. Like, what can we do to make their life better, right? Or easier? I think that's what we're hoping to, as we engage kind of in this initiative, ensuring that they're getting the funds that are out there for them. And as I like to call them, the vultures are not coming in and trying to take some of that money away through consulting fees or whatever it is. But let's try to get as many of those dollars to those hospitals as they can so they can improve their equipment.
So tell us a little bit more about this legislation. The One Beautiful Bill Act passed last year, and the funds that you're talking about are grant funds as a piece of that, correct?
Yes. So the Rural Health Transformation Initiative was meant to kind of fill the void of the cuts that were made in Medicaid. And its chief focus is to what they say transform rural healthcare system by expanding access to care, by improving the quality and health outcomes, measuring that, and then promoting preventative care and kind of chronic disease management. Really what we're talking about here today is investing in the workforce, technology, or innovative care models. So every state has kind of been assigned money or has been granted money that's going to be given out over a 5-year period, kind of in equal installments, let's say. And there's roughly $200 million by state. Obviously, some states a little more, some a little less. But that's a pretty good number to look at. However, every state has its own nuance as to what they're focused on with this money. So in some states, it may be as wide open as, hey, we've got some money. If we were to give you some money, what would you do with it? Let us know. And we'll let you know if we can do that. That's kind of like Alaska, for instance, right? Alaska's very loose right now on that. But then others are very rigid, saying you're only going to get access to some of this money if you're part of a collaborative, a regional collaborative that's working together to, as one instance, like pulling their funds together to buy a mobile MRI that can rotate between 5 rural hospitals. So
Okay.
you have to know your state's specifics and the narrative. And fortunately, there is a website. There's a rural health transformation website out there that kind of gives the breakdown by state and what they're asking for. And some of their focuses this year may be on workforce. It may not be on technology. So in some of those states, they may not be able to say, oh, great, I can go update my capital equipment. That's not what the money this year is being used for. It may be more of a workforce or this innovative care stuff.
So you mentioned a 5-year window. How has that money started trickling out now?
So each year there'll be an application window where the organizations can request their piece of that pie. The money is divided up into 5-year chunks. This year, the state's got this particular set of initiatives, and they want to see the applications with this sort of focus on it. And then they will make it a decision. All the money has to be parsed out by the end of October. So all their applications need to be in before September so that the state has a chance to review those. And we're probably going to recommend organizations get it in even a little sooner than that. Make sure, we're talking about the government here, let's make sure we give them time to go through those. So I think we're really pressing folks for August to try to get your application in.
As I'm hearing you describe the wearing of multiple hats, the thin margins, the operational constraints, now that there's this lifeline that's out here, I am thinking now we're talking about the government and the complexities in and of itself with that said. So tell me, in your experience, Russell, what do you see the challenges are on the table for these hospitals to actually access the funds?
What concerns me right now is I've just in the last couple of weeks, I had a couple of conversations with CFOs. And as part of those conversations, I just brought up the idea of, hey, by the way, are you eligible, or do you know if you're eligible for the rural health transformation money? And in both cases, I got kind of this shrug, like, I don't know, like, I haven't really thought about it. And I thought, wow, because the process is not necessarily complicated, but if you just don't know what you need to do, you might, again, this government, we think, oh my gosh, I got to, all these forms or whatever.
Sure.
So there is kind of a grant writing aspect of it, but there's consultants that will help that. I don't think it's as difficult as some people may view it. Our goal here and our role can be to help those organizations, kind of handhold them, if you will, to here's what you need to do, steps 1, 2, 3, 4. My hope is that at the end of this period, everyone feels comfortable knowing the money's there, they're eligible for it, and they can go get it without any worry about, oh, it's going to be too difficult, or I don't want to go chase it.
On the funding options, outside of this transformation bill, what are some of the other options for capital infusing?
I mean, the only way to get that money, you got to cut it from somewhere else. It's squeezing the balloon. Money is going to go from one place over to the other, and you may have to make smarter choices. I'm not seeing organizations make a capital choice over things like, say, labor, right? Labor is going to come first. Obviously, if something completely breaks down and it's a revenue driver for them, that's going to be a higher priority. But if the IV pumps are on their last legs, they'll be like, well, just keep trying to duct tape it together. So, I mean, I'm oversimplifying a little bit, maybe.
Do you have a sense that some of the responses that you've shared with the CEOs about this available money, do you think that some of the details about these transformational funds kind of got overshadowed by the one big beautiful bill and its total package and how that rolled out?
We heard about all the negative effects of the big beautiful bill, and there was just like this panic. Oh my gosh, all these cuts. I didn't even know there was this other fallback or plan B, if you will, of this rural health team money until I met with an organization that was wanting to go out, kind of like we've talked about, and help organizations get it. Now, they were also wanting a piece of the pie, right? So that's why I was like, why should they be getting a piece of the cut if we, as their performance improvement partner, can do it without charging them? Let's go help them just go get the money. I mentioned North Dakota is doing some fantastic work on engaging their hospitals, trying to help them do what we're talking about, go after and get that money. And in some cases, give them opportunities to use the money to fund either capital components or procurement system components that will make them more efficient and better at doing their jobs. They're probably the leader right now in terms of the states that we work with, in terms of having a plan, executing on the plan, and they're having a really good vision. And then there's a few others that are kind of behind them a little bit, and there are others that are not even bringing it up. I would add, too, that my team has got about 25 individuals that serve these small rural hospitals across the country. We're doing a training with them. Out of that, we're going to ask those spend executives on my team to start having these conversations with their CFOs and CEOs about the RHT money that's there. Are you working on it? Are you interested in it? I hope the answer is yes. And then bring that feedback into our organization so that we can help craft a message to those organizations on here's how you go about doing that, or direct them to experts within the industry or within Vizient or wherever they may be to help them in their journey to go get that money. Because at the end of the day, I want every dollar to be spent with the hospitals and not consultants and third parties, trying to take their cut out of this.
That's a perfect segue, Russell, because I think about the money and about making sure that our clients understand that they have a lifeline available and we can help them get there. I think that second part of our expertise and trusted subject matter experts is sitting right next to you here at the table.
She's going to solve all this.
So Rebecca, let's talk about how we can bridge the gap between strategy and action on capital investments for this community.
Sure, Susan, I'm very passionate about this because this has been a systemic issue in the rural health community for years. I know Russell is really our subject matter expert in this space, given that his team serves these clients day in and day out. But after COVID, we have seen a huge degradation in expenditures in capital equipment. Russell talked a little bit about making decisions about cutting service lines. Those really aren't an option in these rural health areas. We can't be cutting service lines because they don't have the investment funding for the clinical equipment that's necessary for patient care. So when I hear about that, it really is disheartening. And hopefully we can bring together the subject matter expertise to guide these individuals. We heard about the CEOs wearing multiple hats. They don't have the time to educate themselves on how do they access the funds, what's the criteria needed, how do they fill out the grant form or whatever form there is. So our hope is to bring this all to light in a very simplistic format that can be a resource for them and guide them through the process to ensure they get this funding. It's critical. Imaging equipment, which is revenue generating, if that's not at its optimal efficiencies, that could create a lot of challenges, not only with diagnostics, but with throughput for the community. A lot of these folks are coming from far distances just to get an image taken to understand what they have wrong with them. And it's critically important that we make sure that these hospitals have the equipment they need to service the communities in their areas.
I think you're absolutely right. And it sounds like this is the great middle ground of being able to help them access funds, but then how to spend it most effectively. So let's talk about some of the capital solutions and some of the things that your team would be doing in order to help a CEO of one of these hospitals get their arms around the best and most effective use of these dollars.
Absolutely. So we at Vizient focus on all shapes and sizes of hospital systems. We understand that the challenges are different, the technologies are different. And so we look at creating the solutions to help enable them to have those insights. We understand that they may not even know where to start. Russell mentioned patient monitoring versus a CT or an MRI. And where do they start? One of the things we help our clients is understanding their asset mix, understanding the health of their fleet, understanding what are their processes today, what are their funds today, and how can we make the most use of every single dollar they spend. We also have developed programs like a capital commit or even the group buy program to help enable these entities to achieve the best pricing in this equipment with cohorts of their other counterparts, peers, even larger IDNs, to be able to leverage all of that volume. So they may have just one CT that they need to purchase, but if that is aggregated amongst multiple entities and they're in a sourcing event with 50 CTs, think of the value that they can achieve. And then if they do have these funding from the government, that would save them to be able to spend dollars in other areas. Russell mentioned staffing, technology. Those are the types of things that they are all looking. It's not just about capital equipment as much as I'm focused on that. We understand holistically there are significant challenges in this space.
So tell our listeners, does your team help with a budget process? Let's just say a hospital was able to secure $300,000. Are you able to work independently with that hospital to be able to help them understand the most effective way to maximize that money?
Absolutely. We do that every day, Susan. And it's not just the rural health entities. Even our largest, most complex IDNs have that same challenge, is understanding where to spend their dollars. It's just more of an acute problem in this space because the dollars are so limited. But we have the solutions in place to be able to meet these clients where they are. And I'm super excited to work with Russell and his team to be able to create a pathway for these entities that they may not understand is in front of them today. This is a short runway for these entities to be able to get these dollars. And so the easiest pathway that we can create for them with solutions, guidance, that is where our focus is, to make sure that every dollar that's available to them, they can get and be able to expend in their institution to be able to improve patient care.
So for the hospitals who have not applied for funding or that don't apply for funding, what are some additional levers that they can unlock for capital value in their hospitals?
So one of the things I know Russell's team is acutely focused on is our group buy program. I mean, that is an access level program that is truly a value lever for these rural health communities. It's on a quarterly calendar, large imaging equipment, as well as small medical capital equipment. And we even have non-capital equipment in the group buy program. And we've had a podcast around that program when we had our 20th anniversary last year in 2025. So that's something that's just table stakes that all of our members have access to. I think then when you move into that committed model with capital commit, there will be even more value achieved. And we're working on customized solutions for Russell's area around these entities. Also really understanding what price they should be paying. With our capital spend insights technology, we also have developed a programmatic approach for these institutions in the rural health and independent community market, whereas they have access to that technology at a price point that it can be achievable for them. We have worked over the course of the past couple of years as we develop our technologies and solutions to be able to make sure that they're not too expensive or unachievable for these entities to be able to access.
It sounds like we have some solutions available today, whether those funds are accessed or not. And I think that's an important message that we need to get out to our clients. So thank you for that information, Rebecca. It's always important to be able to understand what resources are available. And it sounds like your team is covering several of those. So let's just take a quick moment to pause and talk about what is ahead. I wonder about additional obstacles that might separate viability versus those that struggle. Are these funds just that essentially core in the nature of their distribution for survival?
I think some would argue yes. I mean, why not get it if it's there for you? Why let someone else get it? And even though this is meant for the rural hospital organizations, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The big systems, they're writing for that money, and they may be doing it on behalf of the rural networks they have, right? I think we need to help them go get that money, because it could be as simple as, again, every state's nuanced, so it will just depend on what the rules are for that money. But it could be as simple as, we have 15-year-old monitoring equipment. I don't know what the life cycle is, Rebecca.
But that's true. That's not uncommon.
But we need to upgrade that. So, all right, there could just be getting funds to upgrade their monitoring equipment. Or what I really heard the other day that I thought was a really cool idea that I want to explore further is this centralized monitoring, where there could be kind of I don't know if it's like a hub and spoke sort of deal, but there's a central entity that's kind of helping these smaller entities, smaller organizations, rural organizations with their monitoring. And so it could help in the workforce or the resource situation there, and ensure that the patient's vital signs and everything are being monitored from a kind of a central location.
That's a great call out, Russell. It is. And I think that's one thing we haven't mentioned too. This is multiple constituents solving for these issues, right? So there's Vizient, there's the member, but there is their supply partner that we need to depend on. And what we've seen is a huge transformative situation where these suppliers, they're very focused on this space, and they're creating solutions for this very problem, staffing being one. So the remote patient monitoring, diagnostic imaging, similarly situated. Imaging techs, there's a shortage right now. Even within our metropolitan hospitals, they're having a challenge. You have our imaging directors running scans and then going back up to executive meetings because there's shortages. Well, think about how it is in the rural areas. Our supply partners, we're really leaning on them to help us understand their technology solutions to be able to solve for some of these staffing problems, and bringing technology forward for rural health to be able to have access to that patient care. And really for us at Vizient, bringing that to life, educating Russell's team, helping them understand the solutions are out there, helping these entities. They have so much on their plate. How can we bring it to them in a very simplistic form so they know what's available to them?
Thank you for those insights. I think the partnerships that you've just described are really going to be critical. I'd like to just leave our conversation today with getting your opinions on what should we look forward to? What are you optimistic about that will happen as a result of these funds being available?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm going to be very aspirational in my view that we will get this money in the hands of these small rural hospitals. You will see an upgrade in their technology, or you will see an improvement in the workforce operation, depending on what the state's looking for at that particular time. And at the same time, my team is building a cohort of these small rural hospitals, so they have a forum and a place to share best practices. So I would love to energize that so that there's a peer-to-peer, hey, did you guys not get your money yet? You didn't? How come you? Oh, it's easy to fill that grant out. Oh, let's go do that. It's not just us telling them, but their peers are telling them how easy it was for them to get the money. And ultimately, that's what I'm very optimistic about. And maybe we get some of these innovative ideas like the centralized monitoring off the ground at a couple places, and that ends up working phenomenally. So until it goes bad, I'm going to be optimistic everything's going to work out, right?
I love the silver linings. I love it. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you both for sharing all of your insights with us today. We've learned a lot. It sounds like we've got great opportunities on the horizons to help this hospital segment thrive and not only survive, but to do better with the help and services that they're providing to the communities that they serve. So thanks again for being in the studio today. We look forward to having you back.
Thanks, you, Susan.
Rural and independent community hospitals are navigating some of the toughest conditions in healthcare, but they remain essential to the communities they serve. While financial pressures persist, opportunities are emerging from smarter capital strategies to policy support, like with the One Big Beautiful Bill, that can help organizations stabilize and invest more effectively for the future. I'm your host, Susan Edwards. Thanks for joining us on the Capital Compass. If you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at capitalequipment@vizientinc.com. And don't forget to check out our other episodes to help you navigate the journey to value.